Dozens were wounded, including children, several of them seriously.
Now, if the war in Iran hasn't caught your attention, I'm sure the prices at the gas station have. If you're wondering what lies in the future, a lady recently was panicking, telling me that she's worried about World War III, and she was terrified. I'd like to give you some assurance based on the words of Jesus that he spoke concerning these events that are unfolding as we speak. It says, "Don't let anyone mislead you, for many will come in my name, claiming I am the Messiah, and saying the time has come, but don't believe them." Now, there's obviously many opportunists that in times of crisis like this want to proclaim the Messiah has come, or because they know people in a state of panic will believe just about anything. But Jesus says, don't believe them. And when you hear of wars and insurrections, do not panic. Yes, these things must take place first, but the end won't follow immediately. He goes on to say, nation will go to war against nation, kingdom against kingdom. There will be great earthquakes, and there will be famines and plagues in many lands, and there will be terrifying things and great miraculous signs from heaven. Nations working together. You know, you think of NATO, you think of all the alliances that exist in the world today. When they are combining to wage war, that's what kingdom against kingdom is. But he says, see that you be not troubled. All these things must come to pass, but the end will not follow immediately. It says, there will be upon the earth distress of nations with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring, men's hearts failing them from fear, looking at the things that are coming upon the earth, for the powers of heaven will be shaken. Now, if you look at the headlines, you can clearly see that there is global panic over the crisis in the Middle East, and whether it's earthquakes or climate change, pestilences or plagues like COVID or wars, you see the same reaction of fear and panic. And yet Jesus says to his followers, see that you be not troubled. The mission of the Christian is to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to give shelter to those who are displaced, those refugees fleeing away. The Christian is to continue the work that Jesus did, providing healing and help. You know, there's often many terrible diseases that break out because of all the dead bodies when there's times of war. And so Jesus says our role as his followers is not to get caught up in political polarization. I'm for the US and its allies, or I'm for Iran and its allies. The reality is that we are for Jesus. And so our responsibility is to persist in giving hope to people with the message of Jesus' soon coming, but also of Jesus' death and resurrection as the hope for people, because that's what really offers salvation. You know, Jesus says those who live by the sword will die by the sword. And even when he was crucified, because of his teaching, his followers did not choose to bear the sword and seek revenge, but rather they went out spreading a message of love of the resurrected Jesus, telling people, even the enemies that had crucified him, that God is willing to forgive them, to give them the hope of everlasting life if they would put their trust in Jesus. And so the message spread like wildfire. You see, the distortion in Christianity only came when it got mingled with the government influence as the Roman Empire became Christianized, and they chose to use force to try and spread the gospel, to impose faith on people as they had done in their normal Roman religion. And so then Christianity that embraced the use of power got corrupted, even though there were many faithful Christians like the Waldenses, the Albigenses, that persevered with the simple Christianity that refused the support of the state, because they knew that the method of Jesus is not to force, not to use the sword, but it was for people to choose to love him. And love can never be enforced by the sword or by political edicts and decrees. We should not get involved in the warfare of the dominant nations. My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight. You know, when the disciples wanted to ask Jesus for permission to call fire down on heaven and punish those who had rejected him, Jesus says, you do not know what manner of spirit you are of. I have not come to destroy men's lives, but to save them. Jesus would never fight an opposing religion with the sword, even if they were considered terrorists. That's why he could suffer at the hands of the Roman tyrannical regime and not retaliate. In fact, pray and say, Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do. Take your stand as a Christian. Be comfortable fighting with the weapons of Christian warfare rather than these weapons that lead only to loss and bloodshed and destruction.